Hello friends, good evening, greetings to all of you. I really hope you all had an excellent day. So, in these evening hours, I Kunal Nagpal welcome you to this great platform wherein we discuss the economic news. So, in these evening hours, I would like to discuss or wrap up the news summary for the entire day. So, the first news piece of information is the coal is here to stay despite India's ambitious renewable energy goals. We know that India has been moving very ambitiously towards the attainment of the sustainable development goals, especially to go green, that is the SDG 7 and actually keeping in mind the SDG 13, that is climate action. So clean energy and climate action are the primary areas of concern for the Indian economy. So we also know that India is heavily reliant on coal for the energy production. So here it is stated that India's coal consumption has doubled since 2007 at an annual growth rate of 6%, and the International Energy Agency, that is IEA, estimates that the largest increase in the fuel's demand globally this year from India, that is 7%, or an additional of 70 million tons. This on top of a 14% rebound in 2021 and 1,033 million tons consumption in 2022. So we are going to discuss in detail this particular aspect once we summarize the entire news of the day. Next news piece of information is India's direct tax records 25.9% growth. The gross collection of the direct taxes before adjusting for refunds stood at 13,63,649 crore rupees compared to 10,83,150 crore rupees in the corresponding period of the preceding financial year, registering a growth of 25.9%. A government data on Sunday, that is 18 December 2022, showed net direct tax collection for the financial year 2022-23 recorded a growth of nearly 19.81%. Meanwhile, advanced tax collection for the financial year 2022-23 stood at 5,21,302 rupees. Banks looking at the possibility of the rupee trade with Bangladesh and African nations. India imported the goods worth 3,520.38 million rupees from Egypt, of 1,004.24 million US dollars from Algeria, and 2,725.08 million rupees from Angola in the last financial year. As far as Bangladesh is concerned, the import in the last year from the neighboring country stood at 1,977.93 million US dollars, according to the data provided by the Commerce Ministry. So, the banks looking at the possibility of the rupee trade with these countries is actually quite encouraging, and it's quite a news of respite for us. The GST Council doubles the limit for launching the prosecution to 2 crore rupees. The Council also clarified on the definition of SUVs, that is the sports utility vehicles, for the levy of 22% compensation cess over 28% GST, and decided to come out with parameters to define MUVs, that is the multi-utility vehicles. Briefing the reporters after the 48th GST Council meeting, the Finance Minister Dr. Nirmala Sitharaman said the Council could decide on only 8 out of 15 agenda items due to the paucity of time. Next news piece of information is there is no infighting within Himachal Congress. Conflict was for the CM post, as per Mr. Sukhu. Government is preparing to amend the insolvency law to reduce the time period for the resolution process. The government is preparing to amend the insolvency law as it looks to reduce the time taken for the completion of resolution process of the stressed assets and prevent significant erosion of value of the assets, reported PTI citing a senior official. The amendments to the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, which came into force in 2016 for timely resolution of stressed assets, are expected to be introduced in the budget session. Next news piece of information is quite alarming. COVID-19. India records 176 fresh cases. The active cases account for 0.01% of the total caseload, while the national COVID-19 recovery rate has gone up to 98.8% according to the ministry's website. A decrease of 56 cases was recorded in the active caseload in a span of 24 hours. Next, IIFCL has sanctioned 8,244 crore rupees loans to develop 20 ports, as per the MD. India Infrastructure Finance Company Limited, that is IFCL, has been extending its financial support to many strategic port projects, including the Pradeep Act, Isar Vizag Port, Tuticorin, and Karikal. Delhi records the minimum temperature of 6.2 degrees Celsius. Air quality is very poor. CBDT files review case against the Supreme Court's Benami ruling, terms it continuing criminal offense. The petition was filed by the Central Board of Direct Taxes that frames the policy for the tax department under the Department of Revenue of the Union Finance Ministry before the Apex Court, that is Supreme Court's registry, a few days back. The sources told PTI that the review petition was filed after the CBDT obtained the views of the field units of the Income Tax Department who had implemented the law since 2016 after getting it. Niti Aayog to rework the drafts bill on tea, coffee, and 3 others. Niti Aayog has given its views on the drafts of spices, that is Promotion and Development Bill 2022, rubber, that is Promotion and Development Bill 2022, coffee, Promotion and Development Bill 2022, Tea Promotion and Development Bill 2022, and Tobacco Board, that is the Amendment Bill 2022. The ministry had earlier also conducted the stakeholder consultations on these drafts to address their concerns. Stealth guided missile destroyer Mormugao commissioned into Indian Navy. Speaking at the commissioning ceremony in Mumbai, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said INS Mormugao is basically evidence of India's excellence in warship design and development. INS Mormugao is among the most powerful indigenous warship, Singh said. This is the most technologically advanced warship, he added. AIMS server attack. Delhi police seeks information on China, Hong Kong-based IP address. Key Ukrainian cities, rapid fall leaves unanswered questions. Ukraine's military was basically nowhere to be seen, and the Russian troops in armored vehicles had easily entered the neighborhood, opening the fire and sending shrapnel flying everywhere, witnesses said. Budget 2023, exporters demand support measures to boost India's shipments. Indian exporters have asked for the inclusion of support measures like waiver of electricity duty and easier availability of credit in the upcoming union budget for 2023. The inclusion of such measures will boost the country's outbound shipments. So, my dear friends, we have discussed in detail the entire news summary of the day. And as I said, we would be discussing in detail that is India's heavy reliance on coal, on which it is still dependent despite of its ambitious renewable energy goals. So let's go through this particular news piece of information in detail. Coal is dirty. It makes up for the 40% of carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuels. Its mining works havoc on the environment, and burning it produces the pollutants like mercury, which are linked to the acid rain and the basic particulate matter that causes respiratory illnesses. But the war in Ukraine has caused a mini energy crisis globally, pushing its use to the record levels this year. I repeat, the war in Ukraine has caused a mini energy crisis globally, pushing its use to the record levels this year. And India, the world's third largest energy consumer, was at the forefront of the global rise in coal usage as it fell back on the easiest available fossil fuel in the face of a surge in oil and gas prices that threatened to derail the economic recovery from the pandemic. The trends of coal consumption and production this year indicate that the dirty fuel is here to stay despite the nation's ambitious target of meeting 50% of energy requirements from renewable energy and non-fossil fuel capacity of 500 gigawatt by 2030. That is the entire goal of decarbonization. India's coal consumption has doubled since 2007 at an annual growth rate of 6%, and the International Energy Agency estimates that the largest increase in the fuel's demand globally this year was from India, that is 7%, or an addition of 70 million tons. This on top of a 14% rebound in 2021 and 1,033 million tons consumption in 2022. And this demand is led by its electricity generation, which is overly reliant on coal, that is the thermal energy. Coal-fired electricity generation accounts for about 73% of India's overall power needs and is likely to remain the most important source of electricity in the foreseeable future. Coal-fired power plants make up 50% of the overall installed capacity of 404 gigawatts connected to grids, with another 25 gigawatts currently under construction. The International Energy Agency (IEA) expects India's coal demand to rise steadily to 1,220 million tons in 2025, with 92% of its basic stock going into electricity generation. Electricity demand too is seen growing at 7%. This is actually, I think, directly proportional to the infrastructural development. That is, more the infrastructural development, more will be the consumption of electricity, and more will be the heavy reliance on the energy production sources, and as of now it's coal. The government, which has been propagating self-reliance and cutting down imports, has been pushing for raising the domestic coal production, not just to meet the surge in demand but also to avoid the summer blackouts. Coal production in 2021 reached 800 million tons for the first time and is forecast to surpass 1 billion tons by 2025. Nevertheless, by targeting a share of 50% renewables in its power mix by 2030, the government is basically in the medium term seeking to alleviate the electricity sector's dependency on coal and reduce the cost of energy generation. It mandated 81 coal-fired power plants to reduce the power generation by a total of about 58 terawatt-hour over the next 4 years without shutting down any of the country's 172 power plants connected to the grid. The coal ministry plans to boost the country's output to 1 billion tons in the next financial year and aims to see the highest production and dispatch in the coming year 2023. The ministry also desires to make some significant achievements in the area of coal gasification in the new year. Speaking to PTI, Coal and Mines Minister Mr. Prahlad Joshi unveiled the plans for the next year and said the coal output of 1 billion tons will come from different sources which consist of the state-owned CIL, commercial mines and captive coal blocks. We want to see there is highest production and dispatch as far as coal is concerned. The entire coal production in the country will be the one which will really embark, and that will be 1 billion tons, said Mr. Joshi. Coal India accounts for over 80% of domestic coal output. In the mineral sector, Mr. Joshi said the centre is eyeing some more amendments in the Mining Act which can happen in the second half of the budget session of the Parliament. Besides, the ministry plans to put on sale 500 mineral blocks in the financial year 2024-25. India has come a long way. Joshi said earlier the country's production was 582 million tons and today it is 870 million tons. This output will reach 900 million tons by the end of the current financial year. The launch of the sixth tranche of the commercial coal mines auction, under which the government offered 141 blocks across 11 states, the biggest auction so far for the key commodity, is actually one of the key achievements of his ministry in the current year, the coal minister explained. However, the minister stated the centre's approval for granting a one-time window to the government companies to surrender the non-operational coal mines without the penalty was another achievement of his ministry in the ongoing year. However, Joshi expressed concerns over the delays in the operationalization of both coal and mineral blocks due to the issues like land acquisition, and said there was a need to bring the states on board for the same. I'm not talking about any particular state. I don't want to do that because I have to ultimately take the state governments into confidence and have to work. But there are some state governments which we are not able to bring on board, the minister noted. Severe power cuts due to the coal shortage in a number of states snowballed into a major political crisis as it came in an election year when two BJP-ruled states, Himachal Pradesh and Gujarat, the home state of Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji and Home Minister Mr. Amit Shah, went to polls. The Power Minister Mr. R.K. Singh asserted that electricity shortage was primarily happening because the states have not paid their dues to the Coal India and are unable to lift the allocated dry fuel on time. The states suffered prolonged blackouts on scorching heat, and this boosted the energy demand at a time when the coal stockpiles were low. That sent the officials to the drawing board to rework a coal supply plan to avert the future crisis. Coal-fired power plants were ordered to use imported fuel to operate at the full capacity. India is actually the world's second largest producer and consumer of coal. Three-quarters of electricity produced in the country is through coal. India sits atop the world's third highest reserves of the dry fuel and boasts of the world's largest coal mining company, but per person consumption is still modest. India imports a little under a quarter of its consumption, much of it coking coal, which is used in the blast furnaces for producing the steel and is not available domestically. Yet, there are perpetual shortages. In October 2021, India teetered on the brink of a power crisis when the stocks of more than half of the country's 135 coal-fired plants ran critically low or below 25% of the normal levels. So, my dear friends, this shows really heavy dependence of our country on this source of energy production, that is coal. And basically, the sector of electricity is heavily dependent on coal. So, with time, we will be able to achieve our goal of decarbonization, and as promised by our respected Prime Minister, we would be able to generate nearly 500 gigawatts of energy from the renewable sources by 2023. But the dependence on coal would take time to get reduced, and that's certain. And I really hope that this session was quite insightful for all of you, and you would be able to draw great insights from this particular session. So that's all for today, dear guys. Thank you so much for such a patient listening. And I really hope you all take very good care of yourselves until we meet next. Namaskar. Jai Hind.